there is something about Paul Pelosi, and there is a mystery that we need to unravel. Just after Halloween, we've got our own very Scooby-Doo mystery going on. That's right. And that is that Paul Pelosi, husband of Speaker of Congress, is it? I always forget.
Speaker of the House, yeah.
Speaker of the House in America, Nancy Pelosi, was broken into. Their home in California was broken into in the early hours of the morning on Friday, this past Friday, the 28th of October, and he was beaten by a mysterious assailant that the mainstream media has got a lot of narratives that they want to push, which, when you examine them, may or may not line up exactly with reality. Before I go any further, we do have some content that I would like to promote, which is a recent video that Connor and I did for our premium subscribers called The Politics of Black Panther. You can stop with your Wakanda Forever nonsense,
Yes,
sir.
my brother.
A film that I had not actually had to watch or wanted to watch.
I subjected him
before this, and as you can see, we made sure to get some good content out of it because it's about 2 hours long, so at least it wasn't entirely for nothing on my part. But I do sincerely regret, and as such, I punished you. I didn't think I would be punishing you by telling Connor to watch the fantastic film Mulholland Drive, which we're going to be discussing. And Connor hated that as well because Connor has no taste.
Oh, I hate it. No, hang on a minute. Don't make it
No,
sound like
I know you hate Black Panther.
John, can you just scroll down slightly to the description of this video, please? I wrote it myself. Connor and Harry discussed the politics of one of the worst films ever made, Marvel's Black Panther. We had people crying in the comments, some people even citing Rotten Tomatoes as, oh, you guys are stupid, it was rated by the critics. This film hates you. Don't give the sequel money, don't give this money, and watch this. Instead, give us money to watch it to understand exactly why it hates you.
Quality by democracy is not something that I stand by. Anyway, let's carry on into the news. So, first of all, I would like to highlight this particular Politico article because we will be returning to it as we carry on, but it gives some good details of the assault as it went down, according to the information that the police released immediately after the incident. So let's go through a bit of this. Police said Friday evening that the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of the Speaker Nancy Pelosi, was intentional. Obviously. The man accused of entering the Pelosi home and attacking Paul Pelosi with a hammer specifically targeted the California Democrat. San Francisco Police Chief Bill Scott confirmed on Friday.
I thought he was just asking him for stock advice.
Perhaps. That was consistent with the revelation that the assailant, a 42-year-old Berkeley resident called David DePep, very strange name, had asked, "Where is Nancy?" before the assault. David DePap forced his way into the home through the back entrance, Scott said. Hell of a phrasing there. Officers arrived at the house, knocked on the front door, and were let inside by an unknown person. And that's something I would like to highlight and keep that in the back of your head for later. They discovered DePap and Pelosi struggling for a hammer, and after they instructed them to drop the weapon, Scott said DePap took the hammer and violently attacked Pelosi. What they're missing out there is supposedly some other information that the police released, which was that they were both in a state of undress when this happened, which is going to be something that, once again, we'll come back to, because DePap is not the sort of person that it's entirely surprising would be found in such a circumstance.
I was going to say that. DePap has a reason why he might be nude. I've seen charitable readings of Paul Pelosi saying he may have been disturbed while sleeping and was in his underwear. However, the fact that there is an unnamed third person there...
That's the thing. We've got these questions that are piling up already. Who was this unknown person? What were they doing in the house?
What were they wearing at the time?
What were they wearing at the time? Why weren't they stopping the attack? If they were with the attacker, DePap, why did they let the police in? And why haven't they also been arrested? Because there is no further information about this third person that I have seen released to the public.
Ooh.
Very interesting. Police have taken DePap into custody and said he will be booked for an attempted homicide, burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery with serious bodily elder abuse, infliction of great bodily injury on the elderly, blah, 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 all the sorts of things that you would expect. And Pelosi has undergone successful surgery for fractures to his skull and arms, because as much as as we may dislike the Pelosi's, I'm not going to wish harm to come across an 81-year-old man.
Right. I'm going to say something very controversial here.
Oh dear, is this going to be taken off of
We
YouTube
do not...
now?
No, it won't. No.
All right,
We do not wish harm on anyone. We do not endorse this, of course. It is illegal. It's stupid. Don't do it. However, I can't force myself to be sad.
I don't care. I'm not going to suggest that anybody should be going out and doing such things, but no, I'm sorry. As much as the New York Times and other publications will cry about it, I feel no empathy.
This is the consequence of leftist policies. Sorry,
yes. And
you should have been armed.
As we get further into the well, he had a hammer, so.
So it's his Second Amendment right to defend himself, and he chose not to exercise it.
Well, I mean, he's a Democrat, so he wants to take that away from everyone else. Anyway, but the political manoeuvring comes into play as we get further along the article, where they start to give you an emerging portrait of a politically motivated attack by a man who consumed fringe conspiracy theories, which shocked the San Francisco area and stoked fresh concerns about elected officials facing violence. While authorities have not detailed a motive, DePap's online history, which seems to be something that we've only recently discovered and only recently began as well, indicates that he subscribed to this discredited narrative that the 2020 presidential election was illegitimate, no comment, and espoused a range of bigoted and radical beliefs. He expressed anti-Semitic views, Kanye fan confirmed.
Oh, I was going to say that joke, you stole it.
And appeared to embrace the QAnon movement, which posits a secret cabal of paedophiles has been protected by people in power.
Right, so that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, the obviously true conspiracy theory.
Average Epstein Island attendant.
Yes, but this man was just, according to the mainstream narrative, another crazed right-winger QAnon type. But also we need to remember that he's from, as we go on, he's from Berkeley, possibly one of the most progressive areas of California.
Was he armed with a bike lock by any chance?
He might have been. He was also let into the house, I assume. The reports will be going against that, but I think it sounds like he was let into the house, at least given this strange third person who was there, who just was loitering about the place casually to let the police in, and there has been mention of forced entry into the home, but once again, this is all very suspicious, and we can look at what we know about David DePape now, further from what this article was saying. So he reportedly entered the San Francisco home through a glass door, and it wasn't clear if he circumvented any security measures, which seems very lax, if you ask me. Why the Pelosi's don't have
a ringing doorbell, at least?
A ringing doorbell, or if they don't have security on them. I've seen reports that apparently they don't give security details to the family members of political operatives. But given that the Pelosi's house has been attacked and vandalized numerous times by various political activists, I find it very strange that they wouldn't have security on it.
Can I just point out as well, I don't know if you have this in here, Nancy Pelosi's daughter, I believe it was, endorsed when Ron Paul was attacked by his neighbour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she cheered it on Twitter. So this is a tad ironic.
Once again, no sympathy to the Pelosi's. But then we've also got to question, where's the security footage? If you want to immediately wade out and dispel any conspiracy theories that might arise because of the strange circumstances of this, release the security footage, unless, of course, it tells a story very different to what you want people to think. Once again, no fences, no security, you just managed to slip in. Very strange circumstances. In addition to the suspected weapon used in the attack, Mr. DePape had also brought with him a bag that contained multiple zip ties and duct tape, according to two sources that have been briefed on the incident. The attacker also attempted to tie up Mr. Pelosi until Nancy got home. DePape's social media profiles, as they said earlier, reportedly included conspiracy theories and all of this sort of stuff. And this has all been reviewed by CNN and the Wall Street Journal, the most trustworthy of news sources. And I would also add to this, what was the context in which he was viewing these? Because I'm sure plenty of leftists have had contact with these kinds of things. It doesn't have to be right-wingers in contact with this, because leftists will get into contact with these things and try to discredit them, for instance. So we're being left a lot of context out of these. Public posts reviewed by CNN and confirmed as authentic by Mr. DePape's family include videos produced by MyPillow CEO and prominent election conspiracy theorist Mike Lindell. My God, what a radical. Who continues to baselessly allege widespread fraud had manipulated the outcome of the 2020 election. Other posts included transphobic images, false claims that COVID vaccines are deadly, and content surrounding sprawling conspiracy theories involving global elites allegedly corrupting and controlling the population.
This is put out by MSN, by the way, owned by Microsoft.
Very
Just
interesting.
Just going to point that out.
And once again, with all of this information, I ask, what was the context? Because things can be viewed in a very different light if you say that they were viewing them to criticise them or viewing them to agree with them. Very strange. The 42-year-old suspect also reportedly had a list of other people he wanted to target in addition to the House Speaker. Law enforcement was confirmed. A 2013 article in the San Francisco Chronicle identified Mr. DePape as a hemp jewelry maker. And this is where perhaps some of the narrative becomes a little bit confusing. Hemp jewellery maker living in a Berkeley home with Gypsy Torb, the couple's 2 sons, her daughter, and another person, which is very strange circumstance.
Is this a throuple?
Leftist
throuple?
It will be. We will discover the exact nature of the relationship that these people shared together, and take your mind back to Politico, talking about that mysterious third person. Move to the next. People have pointed out that Politico have released a new article. So click on the images. Here for me, John, please. Thank you. A new article saying that beyond Trump Jr. and Higgins, pro-Trump commentators from Charlie Kirk to former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark Jr. also weighed in online to raise questions about the investigation based on unfounded and false claims. Among those baseless claims that a third person answered the door when police arrived at the Pelosi home, which San Francisco law enforcement has said is untrue.
But you reported that.
And just tap along to the next image for me, please. And we've still got the evidence. The article is still up online if you want to go and see it. So Politico is being absolutely shameless there, trying to erase the past, what they reported, which supposedly was taken directly from what the police officers responding told them. So which one is it, Politico? Was there an unknown third person who just casually let the police in, which kind of disrupts some of the narrative that we're being sold here? Or is it that they were never there in the first place?
It's the mum from Mean Girls. Do you guys need anything? Some snacks? A condom?
It must be. That's the only explanation. And as I said, we can see that the narrative is forming. If we go to the next one again. Under questioning, DePape has allegedly told San Francisco police officers that he wanted to hold Ms. Pelosi hostage, interrogate her, and injure her if she lied. DePape articulated that he viewed Nancy as the leader of a pack of lies told by the Democratic Party, and if Nancy were to tell DePape the truth, he would let her go, and if she lied, he was going to break her kneecaps. DePape also later explained that by breaking Nancy's kneecaps, she would then have to be wheeled into Congress, which would show other members of Congress that there were consequences to actions. He allegedly added that he wanted to use Ms. Pelosi to lure in another person, though the FBI document does not say who. When DePape realized that Mr. Pelosi had called the police, he allegedly decided to stand his ground. DePape explained that he did not leave after Pelosi's call because, much like the American founding fathers with the British, he was fighting against tyranny without the option of surrender.
So he's obviously just mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So
he is a Berkeley drug addict nutter.
Yeah. So
and
this is being politicized.
This has been politicized to make sure that everybody knows that it's the right wingers are the evil ones, the right wingers are the only ones that engage in this kind of behavior. And once again, whether or not certain theories about this man and the circumstances of his visit to the Pelosi household are entirely true, you don't need to immediately try and smear him as a right winger. He can just be some nutter leftist just because he's saying that he's the leader of the pack of lies by the Democratic Party. Plenty of leftists believe that as well. Because
Tulsi Gabbard. She literally just left it.
Yep. And DePape appears to have started blogging in 2007, originally posting about psychedelics and spirituality. More recently, someone using his name began posting a stream of furious far-right political messages. On 2 separate blogs, a user called David DePape, which I assume is the user confirmed by the family to be the same guy, which I don't know if I would take their word for it because they don't necessarily know his entire online activity, posted bigoted attacks on Jewish people, LGBT, blah, 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 climate change denial, and whether or not it's confirmed as true by the family, as stated by CNN, once again, I don't really believe CNN.
Do we know which platform these posts were made on?
They haven't mentioned anywhere.
Okay, because I don't
and
know.
And there's no links, there's no screenshots to any of these images.
I don't know if there's any way if people can find it to go into the metadata, because we do know, and I'm not asserting baseless conspiracy theories here, we do know that certain intelligence agencies do have the power to retroactively put posts there. And so the framing of that as a man with DePape's name, rather than saying it's definitely DePape himself.
When previously all of his online activity had been surrounding crystals and
Psychedelics.
hemp and psychedelics.
Yeah, he could well have been radicalized, possibly, but
Perhaps he was
that
friends with Josh.
sounds suspicious. Very suspicious. So, could it have been that this is some sort of retroactive justification?
That's what I'm thinking, but I'm not going to say anything definitive here.
No.
But this isn't also the only time, as I mentioned, that the Pelosi's have been attacked at their home and their home has been vandalised, and it's not always by right-wingers either. On New Year's Day 2021, for instance, the Pelosi's awoke to find a severed pig's head and red paint spilled all over their driveway. Unknown assailants had spray-painted 2K in an apparent reference to stimulus checks, along with the words cancel rent and we want everything. Just average right-wing talking points right there. And in May, pro-choice activists from the group Ruth Centers, how ironic, given that she was very, very iffy on Roe v. Wade, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that is, targeted the Speaker's home, demanding action on abortion rights after the leak of the draft Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade. John here has also highlighted this photo from earlier on this year in May, when Paul Pelosi himself was in a car accident and was arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs.
I'm shocked there's alcohol in the Pelosi home. Never.
For which he was given 5 days in jail.
Right.
It's good to be connected, isn't it? My personal favourite reason for why it is that he might have decided to go and do this is that he was radicalised by Gamergate 8 years later, almost 9 years later at this point. Gamergate is still haunting all of us. He just watched one too many Sargon videos and he knew what to do. The attacker reportedly ran a now deleted Wix blog, once again, how convenient, where he posted conspiracy theories about QAnon, blah, blah, blah. How did I get into all of this? He allegedly wrote, you've got to throw in all of these allegedlys in here, on August 23. Gamergate. It was Gamergate.
Okay.
That, I'm just going to say...
I'm not saying it's a false flag.
All I'm saying is that this glows.
Yeah.
Gamergate. Just saying it just outright. Why is it that I'm a far-right terrorist extremist, you ask, who plans on assaulting and murdering political operatives? It was Gamergate. That's right. Zoe Quinn, you've got a lot to answer for.
I mean, well, to be fair, given the amount of men... No, I'm not going there. This does glow This does glow like a worm waving sticks, though.
It really does. And then we get on to some of the conspiracy theories about what was really going on and the actual true character of DePape himself. For instance, Elon Musk himself decided to wade in on all of this by posting a link to an article from Talking Points memo on MSN here, claims to be a far-right website that laid out a baseless and homophobic conspiracy theory about the attack on Pelosi. The New York Times tweeted out a new headline talking about this with the headline, Elon Musk in a tweet shares link from site known to publish false news, at which Musk responded with, this is fake. I did not tweet out a link to the New York Times. I do like Elon.
What website did he originally tweet out?
It doesn't say. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of things.
Here, yeah.
Obfuscation constantly going on. All of this. But then if we go to a site like Newsmax that wants to talk about the actual character of the person, this David DePape person, we find a very different picture being painted. Pelosi's attacker was progressive and mentally ill, according to his own ex-girlfriend.
Those two words are redundant. They mean the same thing.
True, but we just need to be clear for those watching on YouTube who maybe haven't encountered this before. DePape had been residing in a decrepit school bus that sits outside the Berkeley home of his ex-girlfriend, one Oksana Gypsy Taub, who is a pro-nude activist. And DePape himself was also a nudist activist.
Wait, so...
Average right-winger.
Yeah, naked people living inside a school bus.
I also found out, through other research, that he lived with her and the kids that they had together after they broke up, and then she had a boyfriend who she got engaged to, who also lived with them, and she had a kid with him as well, and he also ended up as the best man at their wedding.
And they're all nudists.
And they're all nudists, and I think cooked is not a strong enough term for whatever went on there.
Sure, but I'm less concerned about how cucked it is and more about the fact that you have 3 nudists living in a house together, 2 men particularly living with children who aren't theirs, and there's absolutely no concern of child safeguarding there whatsoever.
Very straight. Well, we are talking about California.
We're talking about San Francisco, yeah, true.
Yes, a 2-decade resident of the San Francisco Bay Area, DePape was also known for his pro-nudity activism. He had picketed naked at protests against laws requiring people to be clothed in public. Once again, we shouldn't be surprised to hear this coming from California and San Francisco in particular. Taub herself said about him, he is mentally ill, she said to ABC7. He has been mentally ill for a long time. Taub, who is currently serving time in a California prison for abducting a teenage boy,
And there
you go, said DePape had disappeared for over a year and then resurfaced recently. She also noted DePape's politics were not right-wing.
Yeah,
well,
she
when
said he thought he was Jesus.
Yes, there was also that. When I met him, she said he was only 20 years old and he didn't have any experience in politics. And he was very much in alignment with my views, and I've always been very progressive. And I think you've pointed out as well, he's also a confirmed member of the Green Party of America.
Yes.
So that's all very interesting. And in fact, we also have local news in California trying to do an interview with DePape's neighbor in Berkeley, which we've got right here. And I've just wanted to play some of the highlighted parts of this to give you an overall more rounded picture of this gentleman.
So the last time you saw him was a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and he was here for a few days.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything strange about him or anything that stood out?
There's something strange about the whole household. The entire household is very, very strange.
How about him?
He is birds of a feather with akin to them. So they are just, nudist drug abusers, and that's who gravitates toward them.
And the children, the children who live there, they seem to be underage or under 18.
I'm not sure how old they are.
Okay.
And Trisha, again, what do you say their politics are?
I'm not sure. I would imagine that they're more left-leaning because of their support for the gay community and for, I'm sorry, for other people. But it is, now I'm not sure what way they lean because
Because they have the flag, the LGBT flag with the pot.
Yeah.
So.
But any signs of anti-Semitism?
they are completely unhinged. So I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they play a lot of Kanye in the mornings.
Yeah, completely unhinged. It cut off right before she was talking about their support for BLM.
Right.
They've got pride flags on their home. So once again, average right-winger. And to be fair, because he disappeared a year ago, supposedly, and then showed up recently, even if he had gone into right-wing conspiracy theories and such, his mental state, his behaviour was all the result of a very left-wing lifestyle, as I would put it. And speaking of left-wing lifestyles, he was also an illegal immigrant into the US because he was Canadian, and he was in the US illegally because he overstayed his visa, according to sources.
But California is a sanctuary state, and Nancy Pelosi supports that, so what's the problem?
All he was looking for was appropriate housing, and I thought that housing was a human right. It doesn't matter whose home, so Nancy, Paul, you may as well have invited him in.
Yeah.
And judging by that third person there, you might have even invited him in, but I guess we'll never know for certain. 42-year-old suspect was born in Canada in 1980, was in the US as early as 2001, citing his valid social security number that can only be obtained with a job. So, once again, he was just looking for housing, Paul, you absolute xenophobic monster. Matt Walsh and other commentators online have chipped in on this, and Matt Walsh has stated, I don't know what the hell happened at Nancy Pelosi's house, and I suspect none of us will ever know for sure, but I do know that trying to paint a hippie nudist from Berkeley as some kind of militant right-winger is absurd and will always be absurd. Being that this is San Francisco, it seems perfectly plausible that some drugged-out nutcase broke into their home. Trying to turn this San Francisco crime story into an indictment of Republicans is what's implausible and ridiculous. And Michael Schellenberger, the guy who's been very...
Wrote Apocalypse Never. He was a Californian governor candidate. He's a fantastic gentleman.
Yeah, fantastic gentleman who's been doing a lot of work to try and aid those in California who have been badly, badly affected by their incredibly lax drug policies, had a very similar take to this. But Tim Pool set out the two sides of the argument as it's really going on online right now, which is that you either believe a far-right QAnon cultist sought to murder Nancy Pelosi and mercilessly beat her husband Paul, or, and this honestly, I'm not saying anything definitively, but this is slightly more where I'm leaning
It's more
towards.
plausible.
You believe that Paul let in a gay leftist prostitute for sex, but then a fight broke out over drugs, and we know that Paul has done drugs before, hence the arrest earlier this year, and then beat Paul with his hammer after beating him with his hammer. These are the two sides going on right now. But Tim points out, again, in the tweet right underneath it, why don't you just publish the surveillance footage? Then this will clear it all up, unless, of course, you're worried that the surveillance footage might damage the narrative that you're trying to build.
Do you remember Andrew Gillum, by any chance? The gentleman who was running against Ron DeSantis as governor for Florida in 2020?
No, I don't.
Oh, so DeSantis narrowly won the race, and Gillum was supported by the Obamas, all the establishment types. He was recently, I believe, arrested because there was gay male prostitutes ODing on his floor, and he's a married man.
So a pretty common thing.
Yeah, just your average Democrat.
But happily, even though we don't have the surveillance footage, George Alexopoulos was able to draw what I consider to be an artist's rendition of the event. So if we click here, it's been broken into. This just isn't what it looks like. It just isn't what it's looked like. And maybe we'll never know what actually happened, but I do know that leftists are currently moulding that the right-wingers are not buying their, frankly, BS narrative. And neither should we be, because, honestly, it does sound like a load of nonsense. So maybe we'll find out what happened, maybe we won't. All I know is that the Pelosis are very strange people.
Doesn't he look like the guy from Monster House in the bottom right?
He looks like any number of movie monsters there, to be honest.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the book clubs we do, this one on Frank Decotta's The Tragedy of Liberation. And if you'd like to find out what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.